Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, June 11th, 2018. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, author, journalist, Guy Lawson on Canada fighting back. Meanwhile, Trump says the G7, fake friends. Supreme Court of the United States okays voter suppression in Ohio. And Trump to meet Kim in Singapore tonight. Insano.
It's
Yeah.
but he's a great guy.
Yeah. More reports of horrific conditions of immigrant detainees. And net neutrality dies today while the EPA rolls back and decides a whole class of chemical poisons are okay now. Confirmed John Kelly's email hacked. Just a reminder, an election turned on that. And Florida neglected to run national background checks on tens of thousands of people buying guns. Apparently they didn't have the login. Not kidding. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, another Monday, and tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, I guess, Donald Trump will be meeting with Kim Jong-un in Singapore without anybody except for translators. Do you have the P tape? And
Wink twice. Or 3 times.
I don't know. Maybe it'll work out. Let's hope. Maybe Jong-un is smart enough to just be like, yeah, whatever. Let's just do this and not take Donald Trump too seriously. But I think the thing that people have to, more broadly, as we see Donald Trump basically launch a broadside against the G7 and get into an active tensions with Canada. Michael Moore, incidentally, looking more and more like a sage. You'll recall he not only predicted that Michigan and Wisconsin would go to Trump in this election, but he wrote and directed, I think his only fiction film was 25 years ago about us attacking Canada. So, or Canada attacking us. I can't remember exactly what the plot line was.
Revenge.
But
Settling the score.
Just one thing to keep in mind as these relationships with Europe are strained. I wouldn't say severed, but that it would be wholly irrational for world leaders to look at this country and, Brendan was saying this to me, like, don't you think they're going to realize that we're going to revert back to form or to the mean? And no,
little faith.
It would be completely irrational for world leaders to look at this country and see anything other than an unstable country, one that elected Donald Trump. That's the reality. Even if it was close, even if it was because of, even if whatever reason you want to give it, because of the Russians, because of James Comey, because of Hillary Clinton was a uniquely ill-suited candidate, regardless of what reason you give it, the fact that it happened means that it could happen, and it would be irrational for them to think like, well, okay, maybe next time you get another Barack Obama, and then after that you get another, who knows? Donald Trump Jr. Tom Cotton turns out to be Donald Trump. Who knows? And so we're already now like multiple generations before we could get back to where we are today. Some of our foreign policy, bad, without a doubt. And some of it positive. But I'll tell you something, a country with a military our size that is not taken seriously by the rest of the world is a recipe for disaster. Because if you have no soft power, you start using your weapons more. That's my sense. Folks, if you are going to use your weapons, always important to get a good night's sleep. Do you want to feel more rested every day? Well, this is what I did. I've done this twice now. I've actually probably like 3 major purchases from Brooklinen. Got it for the old place. And then when my former wife and I split up, first thing I did, before I even got a new apartment, ordered the Brooklinen sheets. And I was able to get the kind that I like, the crisper, like cooler sheets. That after a couple of washings, that cotton gets super soft, stays cool. I love it. It's one of the best things about not being married. Named the winner of the best online bedding category by Good Housekeeping. I'm always in sheets I like now.
Bright side of life.
Exactly. Brooklinen is the fastest growing bedding brand in the world, boasting over 20,000 5-star reviews. Versatile colors and patterns. For me, I am a pinstripe guy. I love my sheets pinstriped. I got multiple versions of the pinstripe, the gray, the dark blue. Unlike most bedding that's marked up as much as 300%, there's no unnecessary markups and fees. This is luxury bedding, underpriced. You have to try these sheets today. My Brooklinen sheets are the best. They're the most comfortable sheets I've ever slept on. And they look good. I look like an adult in these sheets. I mean, Brooklinen.com has an exclusive offer just for my listeners. You get $20 off and free shipping when you use the promo code MAJORITY at Brooklinen.com. Brooklinen is so confident that they offer you a risk-free 60-night satisfaction guarantee and a lifetime warranty on all their sheets and comforters. Lifetime. The only way to get $20 off and free shipping, use the promo code MAJORITY at Brooklinen.com. That's Brooklinen, BROOKLINEN.com, promo code MAJORITY. Brooklinen, these are the best sheets ever. The other thing I did at my place, because for privacy reasons, I got new, I don't know what they call them, the roller shades, but semi see-through. So light can come through. I don't know. I don't know exactly how to call it, but I know window treatments, one of those adulting terms that none of the millennials in this office care for.
Yuck.
When they're right, everything in your home looks better when you talk about your blinds, but when they're wrong, everything in your home looks like El Crapo. But let's be honest, taking the time to pick out and buy blinds sounds expensive, sounds kind of boring, and installing them yourself sounds harder than any self-respecting adult wants to admit. Now, not for me, but for others here. I'm not going to say names. Cool. But blinds.com makes it really easy for you. Not sure what you want or even where to start? With blinds.com, you get a free online design consultation. You just send them pictures of your house. They send back custom recommendations from a professional with what will work with your color scheme, furniture, and specific rooms. For me, I just said, I want like those clear ones that you can get through, and that was basically it. They'll even send you free samples to make sure everything looks as good in person as it does online, and every order gets free shipping. This is the best part. If you accidentally mismeasure or you pick the wrong color, if you screw up in any way, Blinds.com will remake your blinds for free. They've made it super easy for you. There's no excuse to leave those mangled blinds up. For a limited time, get up to 20% off of everything at Blinds.com when you use the promo code MAJORITY. That's Blinds.com, promo code MAJORITY for up to 20% off of everything. Faux wood blinds, the cellular shades, the roller shades, more. Blinds.com, promo code MAJORITY. That's BLINDS.com, promo code MAJORITY. Rules and restrictions do apply, folks.
Always.
And look, just a reminder, this show relies on its members for its daily existing. Become a member today at jointhemajorityreport.com. If you don't like those ads, best way to get rid of them is to become a member. And we cut the ads out. That's one of the things we do with the member show. Plus, you get the fun half and access to all our archives of the fun half. So check it out. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Okay, so we're going to get to Giga Lawson in just a moment, but understand that for some reason, things fell apart between Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau this past weekend. Part of it is Trump wants to renegotiate NAFTA with a 5-year horizon, which of course makes it impossible. There is some looking at, apparently, the dispute resolution court, which would actually be, in my estimation, a positive reform. Trump wants to get rid of this. Trudeau, not so much. So it's not, completely black and white. But here is Larry Kudlow going on Jake Tapper's show, State of the Union, explaining why Donald Trump basically lit our relationship with Canada on fire. Now, understand, because I need to put this in context. I did Larry Kudlow's show, I don't know, probably half a dozen to a dozen times. Very nice guy. Larry Kudlow in the past, I'm not telling any secrets here. It was widely reported he had substance abuse problems. But as far as I know, was doing great for decades. Was one of those complete free trader, free market guys. Every response to every economic situation was to cut taxes and get rid of regulations and no protectionism. So when he goes into the Trump administration, not only does he have to completely change the ideological posture he's had for 40 years, but he's also got to deal with Donald Trump. That's my way of saying, forgive Larry if he seems a little bit under the weather in this interview. You'll see what I mean.
POTUS is going to Korea, now Singapore, to negotiate with the North Koreans. This is an historic event.
Absolutely.
Good things, wonderful things could come out of it.
We all hope so. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Now,
Yeah.
POTUS is not going to let a Canadian prime minister push him, POTUS, around President Trump on the eve of this. He is not going to permit.
Pause it. I like it so you say, he'll let other prime ministers push him, not a Canadian.
Not Canadian.
Canadian?
Let's see. He POTUS.
POTUS.
President.
POTUS.
It would be a good thing.
Canadian.
Canadians don't like him.
Good. Don't look at me.
Any
don't like them.
show of weakness on the trip to negotiate with North Korea, nor should he.
So this was about North Korea?
Of course it was in large part.
So because Trudeau said that as Trump was
God,
going to Singapore.
Jake, don't look at me.
Jake.
Jake,
Okay.
yeah, pause it. Jake.
Yeah, Jake.
Jake.
What do you think it was? You
God,
don't do.
yeah,
Oh, I have a TV show, but I don't know logic. Jake. I like that name.
Jake. Okay. So
Trudeau said that as
go
Trump
back
was
a
going to
little bit.
Singapore.
Go back a little
Nor
bit.
should he.
So this was about North Korea?
Of course it was in large part.
So because Trudeau said that as Trump was going to Singapore.
Well, one thing leads to another.
Oh, I
Jake.
see.
They
Okay.
are all related. We had done our work in Quebec, north of Quebec. We did our work. We worked with the Western Alliance, pleased to do so. We get on the plane, and then this guy, Trudeau, starts blasting us.
So what's key here?
Kim must not see
I see.
American weakness. It's
I
that
see.
short. And you know, Jake, you've covered the beef for so long. How many times has President Trump said, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back, okay?
Right.
And this is a case where Trudeau, it was like, I don't know, pouring collateral damage on this whole Korean trip. That was a part of Trudeau's mistake.
Pause it for 1 second. I'll tell you, you put that collateral damage on it. Jake, I love you.
Jake, he thinks we don't.
Yeah,
I also like how he's doing that thing when someone's really blasted and they're trying to get like super specific details in to prove they're on point. It's like, that was in northern Quebec. Ontario.
Quebec.
We
North of Quebec.
north. It wasn't people confuse those things with not detail, right? It's a Jake.
Continue.
Trudeau made an error. He should take it back. He should pull back on his statements and wish President Trump well in the Korean negotiations.
So,
these other members did.
Yeah.
Angela Merkel did. Macron did. I was right there. Theresa May did.
Okay, so
and
the-
all of a sudden, he went rogue.
They wanted to jump his boats. They all wanted to be on Trump as they were hugging him.
Wow.
But Justin Trudeau didn't do that because he's a bad guy, Jake. But you're a good guy. I have my own TV show, Jake. You're stupid.
Unbelievable. Well, what was fascinating was, I mean, in addition to the fact that we're watching this guy implode on TV, and, you know, as soon as you join the Trump administration, it's basically written in stone. It's like you're, but the other thing is that they all had the same exact talking points. Both Navarro and Kudlow said, at the very least, one in print, maybe the other on TV, that Trudeau stabbed them in the back, which has nice resonance. That's the Flugenprassen.
Learned about that in Schluel. What they did to Hitler was so unfair.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk more about the Canadian-American relationship with Guy Lawson.
Tell Guy, shop.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. It is always a pleasure to bring our next guest on. He is the author of multiple best-selling, New York Times best-selling books. Octopus, The Brotherhood, Arms and the Dudes. Some people call it War Dogs. I don't. I call it Arms and the Dudes. Former Rolling Stone reporter, maybe still. And writing in the New York Times just this, like a day or two ago. First, Canada tried to charm Trump. Now it's fighting back. Guy Lawson. Hello, Guy.
It has been too long.
It has been too long. Way too long.
Way too long.
My God.
Thanks for having me. And I still write for Rolling Stone. I just did a lot of transition in that publication at the moment, so we're just letting things play out a bit.
Apparently, there's a lot of transition in all of media these days, Guy.
I'd say in all of the world.
Yes.
Let's begin with the idea that Canada is now America's biggest enemy. How did that happen? Let's unpack that a little.
Excessive politeness, maybe? What was it that... so you did that. I mean, this is pretty well timed because this is a long-time reported piece, as if you were aware that that Canada and the U.S. were destined to have this kind of fallout. I mean, we just played a clip of Larry Kudlow, and we were going to play a clip of Seb Gorka and Peter Navarro completely attacking Trudeau and Canada later in the program. What's going on, Guy? You're Canadian.
Well, when you're talking about Gorka and Navarro and those guys, it just reminds me of another Trudeau, Gary Trudeau, the cartoonist. He once had a cartoon that stuck in my mind where there's a lecturer up on a podium, and he says a little bubble of him saying, "Black is white, white is black," and one student's turning to another and said, "Wow, I didn't know anything of this. I didn't know anything about this stuff." It's like everything is upside down, right? So what happened was I realized that, as a Canadian, an expat Canadian living in America, and a student of politics, I don't write about politics all the time, but I do from time to time, that there was a moment impending for Canada-U.S. relations, and it seemed to me that Canada was playing it very well. In other words, that I read Canadian press as well as American press, about this effort by the Canadians to sort of educate the political and business class, the elites in the United States, about the nature and extent of the trade relationship with Canada, and educate them away from these really false and deeply misleading assertions being made by the president about trade balances and how Canada was preying on this sad, victimized United States economy. And so it began as a piece about this successful kind of, resistance is the wrong word because it's such a slogan, but this successful counter propaganda kind of campaign that Canada, being so knowledgeable about the United States, was waging successfully. And that was kind of the piece until, look, the emperor gets to wave his thumb up and down about this stuff, it would appear. And so as little as like 2 weeks ago, I had a draft of the piece with the magazine that, a joking sort of in my head title was "How Canada Ate Donald Trump's Lunch, but Don't Tell Him,"
right,
kind of thing. And then, then the decision came to impose these tariffs, and this escalation occurred. And I can't speak to the personal piece of this. I was told some things off the record, or they're very cautious, the Canadians. You might be surprised to hear, but the highest level of Canadian, leader, minister, but also the aides that surround them and inhabit the kind of the more detailed policy aspects of it, I think that they felt like very senior American officials were kind of ashamed and embarrassed and horrified by this, how it unfolded.
Right.
And that there was this sense of like, just here's a heads up, this is coming. I know, I can't believe it either kind of feeling that was, it seemed on some level to be shared. the sense of disbelief. But so it wasn't like I was so prescient about this. It was just that I was present. And in a way, that's probably what the best thing that journalism can do right now is just be present. And I don't mean only do that, but one aspect of it is, in the nightly, I come home each evening and my wife just seems to not be able to turn off CNN. It just seems like a disease that's attacked our society. It's this kind of addictive, like, can you believe that just happened, spectacle of high ratings and low intelligence. And so, when you actually go and spend some time sitting with something like the Canadian-U.S. relationship and you understand how complicated, historic, meaningful, and economically beneficial it is, then you get out of that sort of loop. So that's what I was trying to do, and then all of a sudden the loop catches up with me because it always does, right? This is
right.
To use the wrestling term, this is the kayfabe. It's always got to be a story, and the story's always got to star Richie Rich, and here we are. So it wasn't like I thought, oh, hey, Trump's going to do Canada in. It was more like, oh, hey, what's going on with Canada-U.S.? And then you get to be there at the moment of the car crash. That's kind of what happened.
Right. And, it's an interesting piece. You talk about Krista Freeland, or you sat down with her quite a bit, and which is always, I enjoy. I used to, I occasionally would have a drink with her after we would do hits on Dylan Radigan's show.
There you go. She's a really nice Canadian person.
Very nice. And she, has been on this program multiple times in the past. And now it seemed like she was almost the point person for trying to reach out to America, like, middle management, I guess, underneath Trump to sort of, educate, and hopefully they could manage upwards. But that seems to have failed. That management upwards. I mean, just give us a sense, because my take on Trudeau, at least in the context of this, is that there's certainly reasons for Canada to be, annoyed with the United States in some respects, but that element of the NAFTA agreement, the corporate resolution part, seems to be, and it'd be not terribly helpful to either, country's populace, right? I mean, it hands over.
Which part? What are you referring to in the corporate resolution part? The sunset clause?
Not the sunset clause. That sunset clause seems ridiculous. Who wants to get into a deal that you have to re-up every year or 5 years or whatever it is? But the dispute resolution mechanism, where it's basically a corporate tribunal gets to decide what kind of environmental policies, consumer policies, worker protection policies each country has. I think that's a bad thing, and Trudeau seems to be, protective of that, anyways.
Yeah, in my lifetime, so I grew up in the '70s, and as I say in the piece, which is at the New York Times website, I think I posted it on my Facebook page. Always pumping for those Facebook likes, Sam. You know that.
Yes, people like Guy's Facebook page. I'm surprised that you were actually able to upload that stuff, but people should go and like his Facebook page right now.
I've kind of given up on it, but I'll just do it just in honor of our past in that regard. Trudeau, in my lifetime, his father was very much not antagonistic, but watchful, cautious, skeptical of American power. I mean, the Vietnam War, like who won? Who did history prove out on that one?
Right.
And again, the Liberal Party during the period of the rule of Jean Chrétien, who was Trudeau's finance minister in the '70s and became prime minister himself in the '90s, did not participate in the invasion of Iraq, for example. And how's that turned out historically? There is this kind of feverish element to American politics, usually involving force, and usually involving, basically the military-industrial complex seeming to go on a profit spree. In this case, I'm not sure that there's even that much of an irrational rationale to this stuff. It just seems to be almost just purely id, ego, Freud, projection, whatever kind of psychological term it seems to be derived from the personality and the sense of grievance of one person who seems to represent a significant piece of the American public. Significant enough, I think, that all Republicans are afraid of being primaried if they get them mad.
Right.
That kind of level.
Right.
So this is, Chrystia Freeland is the Foreign Minister of Canada, or the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I should say, to get it right. And she's a journalist, she's like part of my tribe. I know people that know her, you know her, I know you, da-da-da. But, she gave it all up for this political life. So I guess if you come on the Majority Report, that means you get to be the foreign minister somewhere.
Well, I mean, it happens. All I can tell you is that it happens.
I'm trying to think which country I'm, maybe Luxembourg for me or something. Right? Australia. I'm an Australian citizen. That's right. Yeah. Hey, that could be a job. She's not like just another journalist, though. She's like a very intelligent, unlike us, and multilingual. Right. Harvard and Oxford. Not that necessarily indicates intelligence, but she is a very smart person. But yeah, she was trying to convince middle management. It's more like upper management, but everything seems to be middle management that's not named Donald Trump anymore, right? Everybody just seems to be taking their orders from him. What she said in the piece, and man, I did not try to induce her. This was not one of those scenarios where you sort of say, well, is this like Hitler? What do you think? She volunteered it.
Right.
She started talking about Hitler. I didn't say, does this remind you of Nazi? What about this whole kind of charismatic craziness? It came unbidden, and it came in a very calculated and I think meaningful way, like as in meaningful, not just that it's full of meaning, but it's the sense of urgency to it. I'm not privy to all she's privy to, like in terms of, how people talk in, having a drink with Wilbur Ross or
right,
or what's his Robert Lighthizer, the United States Trade Representative. I don't know how this socializes. I only get to be the guy with the tape recorder on, and it's all very above board and everything. But she does seem alarmed, and I mean not a little.
Wow, that's scary.
And I don't want to scare people. I don't want to contribute to this whole kind of madness cycle, but there seems to be something abroad. So, as I report in the piece, Wilbur Ross and Lighthizer and these guys all say it's like no big deal. I mean, I just was watching the news on the weekend, and there's Larry Kudlow, right?
Right.
That guy's like a TV talking head.
Right. We just played a clip of him. Yep.
Yeah, he's just like kind of like another kind of buffoon. There he is behind the podium. I just kind of stopped and looked at that, and he's telling Canada it's overreacting. I think that Canada, after this many years of alliance and trading and fighting in wars, is entitled to its own opinion. You don't get to tell people what they're allowed to think and how they're allowed to react. For Canada, this is not an insignificant thing, and I think it's true for the other companies in the G6 as it's rapidly becoming.
Well,
you don't get to change the rules. You don't get to bully. I mean, this is the fundamental thing that Freeland keeps saying, is that a rules-based international order isn't like an abstraction. It's not something that, people want because, hey, they want human rights. It's because it's a deal. You can't just say, for example, you're going to buy someone's car. They don't get to take out all the radio, the tires,
right,
and the engine and say, well, you know what? Screw you. I do that because I can. Give me my money. It's like it's rules-based means law-based means predictable means, an alliance. So am I talking too much here, Sam?
No. Actually, I wanted to go right into that, because she says there are two related mega problems in the world right now. The first is the rules-based order is under more strain than any time since it was invented after World War II. I mean, we refer to that as, on some level, norms, but it's a little bit higher level of I guess. It's a little bit more edified than norms, right? And
so when I was a lawyer. I don't. You
Yes.
went to law school for. Did you even last a year?
I lasted a year. Yes, Guy.
I got all the way through, and I studied it in England, and my sort of area of interest, if now you're going to get too much information about me, but I got interested in maritime law, of all things. And the reason I got interested in it, because it's about international law. The sea, space, all these places are where the laws of nations and the laws of man kind of collide, and you have a real kind of complicated and fun to study as a kid and research and think about set of problems and issues. But what it really boils down to is that, ships passing, the amount of coastline that you have, fishing, all these things are legal things, but they're also things that are really profoundly historical. And one of the things that disturbed me, when I say disturbed me, I mean, whatever, it was an observation. One of the things I observed is how the United States was singularly lawless, but I mean not in the big frame of things, but in small frame things. And in the article, one of the things I write about is Brian Mulroney was the Prime Minister of Canada, basically from most of the mid-'80s to the early '90s. And he was this big-chinned Irish Blarney guy who made it like his number one job was to be friends with Ronald Reagan. And he succeeded at that. He got very sentimental with Reagan, and they'd sing When Irish Eyes Are Smiling together, and they'd have their wives and all this kind of very sentimental, very kind of friend-related relationship with the United States. And Mulroney, cites in the article these two treaties, one's to do with the Arctic sovereignty and another's to do with acid rain. Those are both international law issues. They're kind of about sovereignty, but they're more about soft sovereignty, like recognizing the rights of a smaller country to something that you're doing or you want. And so, yeah, man, this from Canada's point of view, this is that kind of American exceptionalism, which was often been displayed in small form and specific rules about fishing or shipping and who gets to pay insurance and all that stuff, has now become like a hurricane. America is now saying no laws apply to us. There are no laws. We'll tell you the law as and when we feel like it, and we'll use any pretext. In this case, it was national security. So Canada is now a national security threat to the United States because of its steel and aluminum, and soon, because this is coming next, for cars and parts.
Let me just explain to people if they don't know, the only way the president has the ability to unilaterally increase these tariffs is under a provision that that claims that doing so is to protect against a national security threat. And so you have to label Canada a national security threat to argue that these tariffs, that you have the authority to unilaterally raise these tariffs. All right. Well, let me just.
It's sort of like an analogy might be like, you have the right to protect your property, right? So people can't come on and rob you. But this is like saying, okay, you're a threat to my property, so I'm going to go walk around town shooting people because you might come onto my property. Anyway,
right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so Krista Freeland had said there are these two mega problems. One is that the rules-based order is under more strain than any time since after it was invited World War II. That is sort of your analogy, which I think is super apt. That like when I sell you a car, it's implied that it's the radio that I saw when I looked at the car and the tires that I saw when I looked at the car. And, it's not implied, Sam. It's explicitly provided. That's the point. There's not an implication here. It's like that's the deal. Right. That's the deal. And then you show up and you've taken the radio out and the car is on, or he's got cheaper tires and you're just like, sorry, man, that's just the way it's going to be. give me the money or I'm going to beat you up, essentially. And then the second issue she said is authoritarianism, which she says is starting to make gains on democracy. And that one is both a domestic, or I guess maybe primarily a domestic issue, but you see it bleed over into the international sphere with that rules-based order sort of being under the strain. Those two things happening, they're related in that way. So let me ask you this. When Donald Trump goes, and I know that you've had these conversations off the record, but let me just ask you, maybe you can cough once. Does Ivanka come up? Like, is this as petty as?
Really not. And I think it's important to understand that there's like a. I say in the article, and I think it's really true. It's like what isn't said is so much more important than what is said. Almost. Like I shouldn't say almost. It is. There is. When Donald Trump was elected. There was this sense of disbelief, and I don't need to share it with your listeners, about how that happened. And, we can unpack that for all, for eternity, Hillary Clinton's campaign and the deplorables and da-da-da-da. But everyone kind of knew it was going to be really different, and I think that's maybe why a lot of people voted for Donald Trump. But this is what the different looks like. He spent a year essentially trying to be a grown-up, and is just, or I shouldn't say grown-up, but trying to be, he's had people like Rex Tillerson around him, or people who are sort of status quo conservatives. I think that's gone. I just think that's gone. And so, everybody that I talk to, I'll tell you two things about. One, everybody that I talk to, you would think that this is Caligula, or that people are, everyone's afraid, essentially. And I don't mean afraid as in, I think Canada's standing up for itself. I think they're ready for it, and I think this is, oddly enough, going to be a unifying issue for the Canadian people. I don't think that anybody in Canada that's got, a grain of common sense thinks it's a good idea to start caving to Donald Trump about this stuff, because it will never end.
Right.
But there was a level of kind of don't say anything about the emperor, which ironically enough probably signals the end of the empire, because she talks about that too. This authoritarian streak, it's so self-destructive, right? It's like put it another way. Mulrooney talked about the unemployment rate being so low in America and prosperity being such an evident fact, at least relatively speaking. And now, who's responsible for that? I don't know. I won't weigh in on that, but I can tell you it's not entirely Donald Trump's doing. I don't believe that. Right. But there's this fear of talking about Trump in ways that would be provocative. So Ivanka would never come up. Nobody would ever say anything personal. It was much more about what they weren't saying.
Well, all right. So let me ask you this. How much, from the perspective of the Canadians, and I guess I'm also curious about this in terms of the rest of the world too, but I imagine there's some clues in it. When Canada looks at the United States, I think many people in this country feel like, okay, the rest of the world is going to get the fact that Donald Trump is an anomaly, and that that's not the dynamic, right? They look at this and they see Donald Trump this is indicative of a problem that's with America.
Yes, that's exactly right. There's no mulligan on this. There's no do-over. There's no, hey, he's not my president. There's zero sense of he only speaks for the few. It's, this is America.
Right.
That's it, man. There is none of your listeners, none are excluded from this. Sorry to say. And I mean that, I think that applies, you're going to start to see it in personal lives. You're going to start to see it in travel and shopping habits. My piece went up on the website. It's actually not in the magazine until next weekend, but I urged my editors to like put it up because I said, look, I think this is going to blow up. So I sort of knew that this was going to happen. Maybe when you're inside political elites, it's been my observation, you get to sort of know the news maybe a week before.
Right.
Maybe 5 days. When you're in journalism and you're actually inside a circle, this was like the perfect kind of thing to report in a way, because it was like the Canadian foreign minister, like who's thinking about that right now? Like nobody, right?
Right.
So I had it all to myself, which was cool. And but I could tell from just the noises that were being made by those around her, 3 days ahead of the announcement of the tariffs, that they could feel the winds changing. And then I could tell 3 days ago, I mean, it's amazing to think, but it's only like Wednesday or Thursday of last week. I was in Washington interviewing her on Tuesday, and in my business, in the magazine business, this just never happens. Like it was on the website on Saturday morning.
Right.
Like usually it's weeks, months, and that's because the kinds of stories that the New York Times Magazine or other like long-form nonfiction journalism publications have is because you can predict events. You can know in January that NAFTA is going to be interesting in June, and you can have a thoughtful piece about it. But this was like Tuesday to Friday.
Right.
So they were hinting to me that there was going to be a big blow-up on the weekend at the G7. So they kind of knew. But, yeah, it's like this is America now. This is not 50-50. This is not, when they go high, we go low. Or when they go low, we go high. This is not relitigating 2016. Canada does not make a distinction. And when I say that, I mean to say that it's a very sophisticated government, and maybe less the political side than the sort of the permanent. So Canada has a Westminster system, which is, and the minister talked about this, which is like a permanent civil class, and they actually run departments, so that you don't have all these. Every 4 years, you're swapping out different kinds of people. You get different ministers, but the what would they call it? The deep state is a thing in Canada, and it's a thing that people really like.
Well, we have civil service here too, and
but a much higher level there, much higher. So the appointed bits is just ministerial. It's the next level. The assistant minister, everyone else around him or her is permanent.
I mean, it would be so. Even when Trump is gone, this is still the same America that elected Trump, as far as they're concerned. And maybe the next guy may be Obama. But
here's the analogy I use,
right.
Sam. This is the analogy, okay? This is something I think everyone can understand. It's like a kid getting beaten up at school, and by a bigger kid, okay? So for that bigger kid, that becomes maybe something they think about once in a while is on their conscience. Probably not. It becomes like they think, oh, well, that kid was a loser, or whatever excuse they have for it. But for the kid who got beaten up, it's an everyday event, because when's it going to happen again?
Right.
How do I walk to school? What about the other kids? Did they think I'm weak now too? I don't want to go to school there anymore. That's what it is. That's the emotional piece of it, because it's not the tariffs. It's the showing that you can do it anytime you want. It's the kid giving you a wedgie that can turn to a beatdown, that can turn into even worse. So the Canadian response to this is not to do with the specificity. It's to do with the principle of it. You've walked up and punched me in the face. And I don't know if you just think of your listeners, I've been punched in the face, and I can tell you it's a shocking thing when it happens for the first time. And it changes how you see stuff. It changes how you see yourself. It changes how you see other people. It changes how you understand just your basic interactions in life. And so I think that's what's happened to Canada. Canada got Donald Trump, walked up to Justin Trudeau. Just think what we're talking about, right? And punched him in the face. And through that, punched the Canadian people. Not that everyone's a Trudeau fan in Canada,
right, but
everyone feels the symbolic and the geopolitical and the historical insult of it.
Okay, so what do they do now? Like, I mean, if Canada's reaction is going to be indicative of what other nations' reaction is going to be, what do they do?
Multiplied by 10, right. 10, because, like Britain, okay, so, Britain and the United States have a trade dispute. Okay. France and the United States, the European Union, those are incremental things. They hurt, but they're like, for example, your currency being devalued by 5 or 10%. It means you don't get that extra scoop of ice cream on your holiday, or you don't take the holiday. For Canada, you lose your job, your house, your family, your kids, you become homeless. Like, that's the kind of stake it is, right? So was on the phone this morning. Hey, you guys are getting a hot exclusive. I won't go into any detail about it, but I'm thinking about doing a follow-up piece on this question, because that's what comes next. For Canada, this is not incremental. This is fundamental. This is not a change in the rules-based order. This is a change in your reality, your basic reality. To use the bullying analogy, which I think is a pretty good one, this kid, how do I go to school? And if I can't go to school, how do I get educated? And if I can't get educated, how do I live my life?
Right. So what do? Are they finding a new school?
Homeschooling. I think that there's going to be an awful lot of Buy Canada movement. That's only going to be, again, incremental. Fundamentally, I think that look, dude.
What does Canada do? Europe. I guess looks to Europe.
I'll tell you what they have done, and this will give you a sense of what's coming, and why this kind of trade dispute, stroke war, inevitably is lose-lose, but also escalates, and also results in unpredictable, unwanted,
right,
and possibly disastrous consequences. I'll tell you, here's the thing. I was talking to one of the minister's aides, and one of the projects I've been toying with, and maybe your listeners can go to my Facebook page and tell me what they think about this, but I've been thinking watching for the last year, trying to figure out how to report on this new age in American life. About 3 months ago, I wrote a book proposal, and the book proposal was basically Canada explained to Americans. And the reason I thought of it is because, number one, the level of ignorance is just epic.
Right.
So Canada's a huge trading partner, historical ally. Everyone kind of makes fun of it and blame Canada and ha ha ha. And Michael Moore makes a movie about a war with Canada, and it's sort of like a joke, but it's actually not a joke. And I was trying to do but ironically enough, I was thinking about doing a kind of jokey book about Canada for the United States. And I'm still thinking about it. So I'd be curious to know if people would be interested in reading that book. But Canada has imposed tariffs on Kentucky bourbon, because that's Mitch McConnell's
right
constituency, his state that he represents, and Wisconsin gherkins that specifically come from Paul Ryan's district. Yeah, like that. You know who's been lobbying against this whole mess is the most conservative group in the country might be the Kansas Wheat Farmers Association.
Right.
That's where it's going to go.
It's interesting. I did see a piece. I can't remember what Canadian writer it was, but an opinion piece saying you should be attacking Donald Trump's hotels. Right. No properties in this freezes assets in Canada.
I don't know that he has any. I'm not sure that he has. I'm really not sure of his state of assets
I don't know
anywhere.
either. But okay. So Canada's going to turn inward. But how does when they start to make
turn inward, but also become, look, the ignorance of Americans about Canada, and I don't mean that in an insulting way. I just think it's in a kind of it's just why bother with something so small?
Right.
Is matched only by Canadians' significant, profound knowledge of America, because they need to know. And so I was going to tell you the story about this aide. What this aide said to me, I said, I'm thinking about writing this book, and I don't know, but no one's going to read it. I said. He said, well, you never know. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, what's it going to look like a year from now? And I said, what do you mean, like a trade war? And he goes, well, who knows? So, meaning to say that there are people. And I'm not saying he's the minister or this person was the minister or that this is something that's, being contemplated, like the Canadian generals are standing around a map you know, going there. We'll flank them through Saskatchewan and we'll take North Dakota in a day. But there are people in Canada who feel like all bets are off.
Well, first off, take North Dakota is what I would say to Canada, and there's a couple other states.
I've been there.
There's a couple other states.
I would prefer Napa Valley.
Or I would say take New York State, and we're Canadian.
There you go.
And
I mean, you know,
so basically, let me get this.
For years, I've made this joke. For years, I've made this joke that, you know, like you have this anti-terrorism thing, and they talk about Muslims. If it ever really got to something, how would you catch Canadians?
Well, that's what I was just about to say. This time next year, we're going to be talking about the wall, and it's not going to be the one on the Mexican border. It's going to be the one
Game of Thrones,
the wall in the north. Well,
it's ridiculous.
Guy Lawson, we will put a link to the piece in the New York Times, and we'll have you back on soon, buddy. I don't know what.
Yeah, you know, it's been too long. I'm sorry it's such a strange subject, but I hope that it was good for you. I enjoyed it.
Well, we loved it. Guy, thanks so much. And folks, we will also put a link to Guy's Facebook page. I want a 35% increase in likes.
That'll be like 7 people.
Well, there you go. Bingo. We can hit that. Thanks, Guy. Talk to you later, buddy.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Guy Lawson, ladies and gentlemen. Bloop. How about that? A year from now, we're in small border skirmishes with Canada.
Team Canada.
Don't they all they all just ride their horses anyways, like those Mounties? Like, it's not. Well, we can take them.
I mean, a horse makes you pretty capable.
I guess that's true. I'm also, if we have to make some hard decisions, Canada looks awfully appealing.
They would really up their nuclear arsenal if they took North Dakota, though.
That'd be huge. And it would help in terms of electoral politics in this country. That's what I'm saying. Take a couple of states, 6-8 senators worth of states. I feel like they could take pretty easily. I don't know. It's something to think about. Maybe we can all just start a letter writing campaign to Trudeau and get him to mobilize the Canadian forces. Folks, couple of house clean. Just a reminder, you can become a member of this program by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, today is Monday, which means tomorrow is Tuesday. Tomorrow on the Michael Brooks Show, you can prepare for it by going and subscribing on iTunes. And that way, you don't even have to think about it. It just shows up on your phone in some way. Or you could also, I guess, subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notified that the show is going live. But in the event that you don't do those two things, I will tell you right now who's going to be on tomorrow night. It's...
Oh, you didn't have it?
I don't know.
I thought you had it, Sam. Mike Hanna and Cody Johnson.
Mike Hanna is that the British guy.
Mike Hanna, well, he's South African, actually.
South African. What he did
Al Jazeera, yes.
And he didn't know it. What was it?
And he didn't. But it turned out he had read the letter.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Because
about the letter.
he is
Donald Trump
totally
said he had not read the letter, but it turned out he had read the letter.
Yes. We're talking.
You should have him just re-record that for your show.
I do kind of
send him the. Just get it so that we could use it as a clean audio drop. And meanwhile, Jamie's The Antifada is available on patreon.com/The Antifada. And on this week's episode is...
Oh, well, this is our second ever premium episode, which is very exciting. And in this episode, we take questions from our awesome listeners. So
this is like your own private AMA type of situation.
Yeah. And the questions were very high quality. We're very impressed. We talked some shit on the Doors, as per usual. We talked a little bit about goth music.
Just alienate more people.
Talked about, politics, obviously, quite a bit.
Goth politics.
Check
and
it
Matt, you do not answer any of those type of questions on literary hangover. Is that right?
I will be doing Q&As in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
fine.
I will be doing that, brother.
But people can subscribe on iTunes to that one too.
Yeah, they can. Rip Van Winkle coming up this week, and
wow.
when I get to 250 patrons, I will be starting a Twitch account.
Whoa.
Streaming video games.
Whoa. Wow. You're really going way out there.
You'll force me to do
You're
it.
gonna force you to play
I
video
would
games?
totally not have done this otherwise.
And if
I get to
and ladies and
350,
gentlemen,
I'll smoke weed while I do.
That's what you're gonna do, and if I get 400, I'm gonna smoke from a bong.
Nah, when I get
If I
500,
get 500, I'll carve out a Red Delicious and make that into a bong.
when I get 500, I'm getting VR goggles.
There you go.
It's kind of like how when we hit 183, I'm going to take acid and try to make a pizza and show you the video.
There you go. 1,000.
Oh, and I have to say, don't forget, 2,000 on TMBS. We already have the Glenn Beck food buckets ready. That's going to be so disgusting.
Wow.
I will be tuning in for that.
That is commitment.
Slightly different era.
You start training my stomach.
That was when Reagan suggested it, and with the who's what's his name? What's the evangelical guy's name?
Oh, Baker.
Yeah, Baker.
Jim Baker.
And then Reagan, I think, already had Glenn Beck in food bucket. He's like, I already got the Glenn Beck stuff. I'm just waiting.
Of course.
Matt's been training
All
his
right.
whole life with the fast food.
Oh no, Matt's gonna win. There's no doubt. I'm gonna have to be taking like Ayurvedic tinctures, and I'm gonna go to your friend's hippie store and stock up to protect my stomach.
Nice.
All right, folks, quick break. Head into the fun half, 646-257-3920. You can IM us through the app at majorityapp.com. See you in the fun half. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. The number is 646-257-3920. You can IM the show. I think that should be up, and yes, it is. Let's go to the calls. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Ronald Reagan.
Hello, Ronald Reagan.
Thanks for having Guy on. I'm a big Guy Lawson fan.
I knew that you were, and that's why we had him on.
Yep, just for me.
Yeah.
Audience of one.
That's right.
People should check out his books, Octopus and Arms and the Dudes.
Yes,
right?
Both books are great. Octopus, the second half of Octopus is just insane. And the whole thing is just, I don't know why that hasn't been made into a movie yet. I think it was supposed to be like an HBO thing. It just to retell slightly what it is. It's the true story of this guy, Sam Israel, who was working on Wall Street and ended up being like a hedge fund fraudster. And because he had what he had seen on Wall Street came to be victimized by another fraud that was completely
made him the perfect mark for this
Total.
even more elaborate scheme that he got dragged into by a couple of guys that were like really like characters out of like, I don't know,
It's
like
nuts.
an Elmore Leonard novel or something. It was super bizarre. It's a really good book.
So
really good.
But I know that's not why you were calling today, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, well, real quick, I do want to say during the election, I knew that Trump and Hillary, it was a bad matchup, just like in sports. Sometimes there's a bad matchup. And one of the things that I knew was going to be problematic was the issue of trade. Because I remember being in like 8th grade and my crazy right-wing uncle who like dropped out of high school and has no education going on a rant about NAFTA. And I know a lot of these trade deals are problematic in certain ways, but they're also really complex. And Trump was saying basically, you know, we're just going to throw them out. And I knew that was going to have a certain type of resonance with the right wing, especially when the message from the other side was, you know, they're problematic, but whatever. So anyways, but it is crazy that this is fixing basically like a non-problem, right? Like, why are we trade warring with Canada? That's absurd. But anyways.
Yes, indeed.
So I wanted to talk real quick about asylum law, and a friend of the show, Jeff Sessions, he's set to make a big announcement today. My prediction is, so Jeff Sessions can certify immigration cases that are on appeal to himself to issue his own decision. One of the cases he certified to himself a couple of months ago was a case involving a woman who was seeking asylum based on being a victim of domestic violence. And so if I can give like a brief 2-minute primer on asylum law and who's protected. So in order to win, I asked a question, then I just went right into it.
Go ahead. But, I would hang up on you if I wanted to say no. I wouldn't even say no. I would just hang up.
Just hang up, right. So in order to win asylum, you have to show that you'll be persecuted in your country. It's not enough to just come from a dangerous place or to have even been threatened or experienced violence. So a lot of people who are coming seeking asylum, they might have been threatened, kicked out of their homes, or they might have had close family members disappeared or whatever, and they still will ultimately lose their asylum claim because they've experienced the generalized violence, but they haven't been persecuted on account of a protected ground. So the 5 protected grounds are race, nationality, religion, a political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. And for a long time, advocates and attorneys were pushing to get some sort of carve out under the social group for women who are victims of, who are fleeing domestic violence, essentially. And for a long time, the courts just said, no, that wasn't, it's not the design of the statute to protect women fleeing domestic violence. And in 2014, the Board of Immigration Appeals issued a decision called Matter of ARCG, which says Guatemalan women who can't escape a domestic relationship or a marriage, a violent marriage, can be considered a particular social group for the purposes of being protected under the asylum laws. And not every person who's been a victim of domestic violence gets protection under the law. So in that case, ARCG, she'd, I think, been raped and beaten for many years and tried to escape. And he was, her partner was tracking her down in parts of Guatemala. And so what the there was a huge decision because the Board of Immigration Appeals was saying is that there's a carve out. There can be protection for people in these extreme circumstances. And so Jeff Sessions took one of these cases and certified it to himself. And I anticipate that later today, because he's speaking at a conference, and he said that later today he's going to be issuing a decision that restores sound principles of asylum and longstanding principles of immigration law. That's a quote. So I'm anticipating a decision on this case today where he's basically going to undo that decision in ARCG and say that, being a victim of domestic violence is not grounds for protection under our asylum laws, which, when combined with the fact that we're now housing hundreds of these women separated from their kids, and we're also going to pull the rug out from under them and say, by the way, you might have heard that fleeing your abusive husband would be grounds for protection in this country, not any longer. It just adds, as if the situation could be worse. Somehow it's gotten worse, or it's about to get worse. And so, things are really, really bad. And I would encourage people, I guess, I think that I keep saying this, but we have to be loud and obnoxious like the Tea Party was in 2009, right. I guess it was. And, really put pressure on these people in unconventional ways, unconventional, nonviolent ways. But, it's really, really sad. And we've won some of these cases, and it's not easy. Even with that decision, ARCG, it's still hard. A lot of judges will say, well, she can just move to some other part of Mexico, or they'll find ways around, to get around that decision. And so even with that, the limited protection, it's been a struggle, and now it's going to be even more complicated. But I just wanted to talk about that.
It's just, I guess, one more. I've got 3 or 4 stories today that outline, what's going on. There's, I think we actually have a sound clip of Pramila Jayapal, who is from out in your neck of the woods, Congresswoman who went to the SeaTac Federal Detention Center out, I guess, in the in the Seattle area. And she said, well, let's play this clip right now of, since we, and maybe, Ronald Reagan, if you have any experience with what's going on, give us some context for this clip. But she visited one of these centers, and it's heartbreaking to hear about essentially one of these camps that we have created.
Hi, I'm here in front of the SeaTac Detention Center, and I spent 3 hours this morning. I was given access to go in. We demanded access, and I was given access to go into the detention center and speak with the 206 women, all the women who were a part of this group. There are 206 people who were transferred here. 32 are men. We spoke with all of the women who are here. The vast majority of them are asylees. They are seeking asylum. They come from 16 different countries, very large numbers from Cuba, from El Salvador, from Guatemala. but all the way as far as Eritrea and other places. Half or more of these women had children that were forcibly separated from them. They were never given a chance to say goodbye to their children. The vast majority of these mothers do not even know where their children are. They have not spoken to their children. Many of them have been in custody in various facilities before coming here for now over a month, and many of them between 2 and 4 weeks. They talk about the facilities where they were held by ICE and Customs and Border Patrol by names like the ice box, because it was kept so cold. They were not given any blankets, any mats to sleep on. They were not provided with clean drinking water. The only water they had access to was water from the sink, which was dirty and chlorinated and terrible. Many of them were not given access to food for long periods of time. And another place that they were held, they referred to as the dog pound. They talked about the treatment that they had gotten from ICE officers and the Customs and Border Patrol officers as being dehumanizing. One woman reported being hit twice in the face by an agent. What I saw was absolutely horrific, what I saw and heard. And we have always had problems with the criminalization of immigrants, but this is a new blow to take folks who are asylum seekers and throw them into a facility, not provide them with any access to basic human rights, and worst of all, to separate mothers from their children. I am going to do everything I can in my power to stop funding a rogue agency, the Department of Homeland Security, and to get these families back together, these mothers back together with their children.
All right. So Ronald Reagan, as an immigration attorney, can you clear something up for people who don't understand? Definitionally, if you are seeking refugee status, and I don't want to make this about there being separate class of people, that one class of people deserves this type of treatment or doesn't. But specifically in this context, if we're talking about people who have come here seeking refugee status, they are not illegal anything. They're not even undocumented immigrants, are they? They are approaching this country and doing everything by the law, and this is the way we're treating them.
Right. So I think there's two different classes of, not classes, but there's two different ways to seek asylum. You can go to the port of entry and say, hey, I don't have papers, but I'm afraid to be in my country, and here's why. And then you'll have an interview, and you can be paroled or let in to seek asylum before an immigration judge in removal proceedings. So they're trying to deport you, but you have the right to present a defensive asylum application. The other way would be to get caught entering illegally, and then you can express a fear of return. And at which point, you would essentially go through the same process. You'd have an interview with an asylum officer, and then you could be let in to seek asylum. And that's perfectly legal. What's the change that's happened is that Jeff Sessions has insisted on implementing strict enforcement of a misdemeanor illegal entry law, so that if you're caught, in the desert or crossing the river or wherever you are, somewhere that's not the port of entry, rather than just voluntarily returning people, which has been the norm since forever, or going through this asylum process, they're first going through a criminal procedure to charge these people with misdemeanor illegal reentry or illegal entry, and that's when they are taking the kids, putting the people entering into essentially some sort of county jail, I guess, and processing them en masse with what amounts to like a trespassing charge. and then I guess after that criminal procedure is over, if you're afraid to go back, you can go through the normal steps. But all of this is new and gratuitous, and it's designed explicitly. I mean, if you just have to listen to Sessions' words, to serve as a deterrent for more people coming here. So the idea is, if we make you and all of this stuff, these news stories, they love that this is getting out, that it's terrible. And yeah, we take your kids, and you might not see them for a couple of weeks.
Right.
That's the point.
Right.
And so if you're in Honduras and, your husband's trying to kill you or whatever, whatever the story is, you might think twice about trying to come to the United States. And today it's going to get worse because a lot of these people who are detained, who haven't seen, and I had a friend who went to the airport this weekend to volunteer, screening these cases, and to hear the stories of like, where is my kid? I haven't seen them for weeks. I don't know where they are. A lot of those people came here understanding, my abusive partner, who maybe I was forced into marriage to as a teenager, wants to murder me. I can get protection in the United States. That could change today. And so not only have they gone through this, what amounts to torture in my mind, they now face the very real possibility that the protection they sought no longer exists. And so ultimately these cases will have to be decided on appeal and then go up to a circuit court, and all of that is very timely and often expensive. So it's it's horrible. It's horrible. What's going on is really, really terrible. And the Nazi stuff is not the comparisons are not hyperbole, I don't think, because this is how it starts, right? We've got, the law obligates it. We have to. Our hands are tied. That sort of bullshit.
It's got to start somewhere.
Totally
It's got to start somewhere.
All right, man.
Ron Reagan, thank you so much. I appreciate the call.
Bye.
Unbelievable. It's heartbreaking that. And here is Donald Trump now responding to his own administration's policy of separating children and holding asylum seekers in these wretched conditions of detention centers. It's almost like if he was in a position of doing something or not completely responsible for it.
Well, the Democrats, this is a Democrat bill. The Democrats can end that very quickly. All they have to do is sit down with us and negotiate a real bill that allows us to keep criminals out of this country. It's very easy. Schumer is a guy, he complains, but he doesn't do anything. Schumer's a guy who is an obstructor. He can't do anything. All he can do is obstruct. All they have to do is call us, and we'll draw a bill that gives us great border safety and security and is fair. Because I don't like the children being separated from the parents. I don't like it. I hate it. But that's a Democrat bill that we're enforcing. We can change it in one day. All they have to do is come and see us.
All they have to do is say, no more Guatemalans come to the country ever. And then maybe we'll do that other thing.
Unbelievable.
He does always get his kernel of truth in.
Yep.
Like Chuck Schumer's a whiner who doesn't do things.
I mean, there's...
But that is just so breathtakingly disingenuous,
yes,
man. Wow.
Completely dishonest and
It's
shocking.
Literally...
High-level deflection.
AG-generated like executive branch policy.
Somehow the law changed with the Republicans controlling the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Somehow the Democrats were able to get a bill through that caused the children to be separated from their parents.
No, you did.
Right, exactly.
You.
I'm rubber. You're glue.
I wish.
Oh no, he thinks that we did it. Anything else we could do to help you on your agenda?
I wish Chuck Schumer could obstruct as well as Mitch McConnell could.
Oh my
Dude,
God.
I wish Chuck Schumer could obstruct as well as like, I don't know, Tom Daschle. That guy is like doing nothing.
Meanwhile, back on the Attack Canada front, we heard earlier in the program from the we heard from the footloose and fancy-free Larry Kudlow earlier in the program, who was clearly celebrating his new position very early, it appears. Here is Peter Navarro. He is the president's top trade advisor, on with Chris Wallace in the wake of what appears to be the opening salvos of an extended trade war with our largest trading partner and probably closest ally, Canada.
Over new tariffs he's imposed on steel and aluminum imports. Joining us now, one of the architects of that controversial plan, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro. Mr. Navarro, the summit ended with a nasty dust-up between President Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau. He held a news conference after the summit in which he said Canada will retaliate for tariffs that the U.S. has imposed.
Let's pause it for 1 second. You know, this whole dust-up thing, the idea that a country would retaliate to tariffs placed upon them because they're supposedly a national security threat, I don't even know if I would call that a dust-up. This is wholly created by Donald Trump. Wholly and totally created by Donald Trump.
The natural cause and effect.
Right, exactly.
On Canadian aluminum and steel, here is Trudeau.
We move forward with retaliatory measures on July 1st, applying equivalent tariffs to the ones that the Americans have unjustly applied to us. Canadians were polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
Well, President Trump responded with this tweet while flying here on Air Force One to Singapore. Trudeau of Canada acted as so meek and mild during our G7 meetings, only to give a news conference after I left. Very dishonest and weak. Question, Mr. Navarro, is that really how we want to deal with our second biggest trading partner?
Chris, there's a special place in hell for any foreign leader that engages in bad faith diplomacy with President Donald J. Trump and then tries to stab him in the back on the way out the door. And that's what bad faith Justin Trudeau did with that stunt press conference. That's what weak, dishonest Justin Trudeau did. And that comes right from Air Force One. And I'll tell you this, to my friends in Canada, that was one of the worst political miscalculations of a Canadian leader in modern Canadian history. All Justin Trudeau had to do was take the win. President Trump did the courtesy to Justin Trudeau to travel up to Quebec for that summit. He had other things, bigger things on his plate in Singapore, where you are now, Chris. He did him a favor, and he was even willing to sign that socialist communique. And what did Trudeau do as soon as the plane took off from Canadian airspace? Trudeau stuck our president in the back.
You know, it's amazing how personal that this guy's talking about this. And like, he did him a solid by coming to his party when he had a different party to go to. And then he even signed on to his letter, and then he was just like a dick.
It's like The Hills, but starring the parents.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Say it to my face.
There's only one move left.
Deutschen Luschen Lagen. Honestly, that stab in the back thing, if folks want to, look, people use turns in the phrase all the time. But that phrase, maybe just a coincidence, was used quite a bit in the run-up to the Nazi Germany Holocaust, as arguing that the Jews were doing that to the German people.
But that was also why Dad said we couldn't have black people in our apartment units. It just works for everything.
Deutsche Luschen
Dolchstoßlegende.
Yes.
Oh my God.
There you go.
Dolchstoßlegende.
Germans are scary, man.
But if you look at that press conference, it's not like Trudeau was. He just said we're
polite, but that guy's a total loser. And if you keep pushing me, I'm going to screw your daughter. That's what he needs to do. You're upset now, huh? I'd like to see you angry. How about your daughter and your fake wife? Everyone.
Now, as you know,
the whole team's getting hit.
Peter Navarro said that there's a special place in hell for people who
There's a special place in hell for people who counter-brief after a meeting about a tariff
I don't let anybody that argues in bad faith around me, okay?
There's a special place in hell for leaders, specific leaders who fill in the blank, kill their own people, attack, start wars without provocation, starve their own people, put people in detention centers, separate children from their parents.
Misinformation.
Yes. No, it's not that. It's if you in any way cross President Donald J. Trump, and who better to carry that torch than Fox and Friends and Seb Gorka.
Meanwhile, let's take a step backwards, Sebastian. When the president left Canada on Saturday, it sounded like he was going to sign on to that communique regarding what had happened at the G7 summit. But then Justin Trudeau got out on television and shot off his mouth, and the president was steamed because it made him look weak, he felt. What did you think of the prime minister?
Very disappointed. Really childish and unprofessional behavior. If you want to treat your friends like friends, that's exactly what you do. You don't make arrangements face to face, and then as soon as the individuals left the building, talk behind their back. That's not what true friends do, and I think Peter Navarro's commentary on Fox was spot on. The Canadians will regret this action by their prime minister.
There you go. Peter Navarro was spot on. That's it.
Friends don't
Good
do
to know.
that to other friends. We're trying to build a friendship-based order.
Gives you a good sense of what Seb Gorka's got on his plate in Singapore if he's actually just scanning Fox News for different interviews. Apparently not as much reporting duties as he thought he might have there.
He's the kind of wingman that gets you drunk and then shakes the babe that you're totally trying to score with. No integrity whatsoever.
Poor wingman. Meanwhile, Seb Gorka is in Singapore. Oh, yeah. Here is a clip. We didn't play this earlier with Guy, but here's a picture that apparently Trudeau gave Donald Trump. Can you zoom in on the... okay, it's a picture of Donald Trump's grandfather's hotel, I guess. It was Fred Trump Sr., right, when he was in Canada. And apparently it turns out that was a brothel. And some people suggest that perhaps maybe there was a little bit of trolling that was going on here. That
it was a gold rush brothel, a boomtown brothel, which is an interesting place for the Trump fortune to
classy
begin.
stuff.
A lot of people were able to make a lot of deals at that brothel.
Look, don't be against sex work.
What's wrong with sex? Why are you shaming sex workers?
That's
now?
right.
That's not very enlightened.
Trump is like that American Vandal kid who can only apply himself in the area of fucking with people.
Right.
That's exactly the kind of reference I
possible.
understand. I know those references. I know all references. All references.
There you have it. Meanwhile, we mentioned tonight,
And
9
Grandpa
p.m.
Trump was peed on right there. Right at that. That was the first block. That was where it was a cold night and he was sweaty. And the insulation was very bad. And he said, girls, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shower me off. And that's how it started.
And that started a lot of laundry patents, too.
Yeah. It's a whole family tradition. I remember Dad would tell me about it because I would have to watch Dad while he was peed on. And then Dad would say, I run the family. I run the family. You don't talk to Mommy.
That's what Grandpa...
But she's not Mommy.
Grandpa got the idea for video cameras after he said, good thing there's no video cameras invented yet. And I can't get in trouble or blackmailed. And then, of course, that was the idea for the video camera.
And then he owned a chain of Radio Shacks in Kew Gardens, which got shut down because we wouldn't sell radios to Puerto Rican people.
There you go.
So many stories.
The family tree. The family tree. Your father ripped off someone and his father. So
disgusting
tonight,
to the core, like going back thousands of years.
Yes. This is an image of your great grandfather Trump, who was a shepherd, who would pay the sheep to pee on him.
And he would be up in the hills. By the way, he was the best shepherd.
Sheep would pee on him, and he would never tell anybody about it.
He felt invigorated.
No,
and then the other shepherds held it over him as black.
That's right.
And the sheep were loyal. Loyal sheep.
They were loyal
That's
sheep.
right.
And that's how leadership should be.
That's right.
And then Dad punched me in the face.
Leadership. All right. So, as you know, Donald Trump and I was going to say Sepp Gorka. Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un are in Singapore, although Sepp Gorka is there, just walking around, showing off his Camaro. And here is
he got it shipped to Singapore.
Anthony Scaramouche was on Fox and Friends with Abby Huntsman. You know, John Huntsman's daughter. I only bring that up because it's clearly just nepotism. But here is how she set up the meeting of these two countries' leaders. And I think she may be onto something.
He's in Canada.
There we have him. There is the President of the United States, Donald Trump, about to walk down those stairs, stepping foot in Singapore as we await this historic summit with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Anthony, talk to us about this moment. I mean, this is history. We are living, regardless of what happens in that meeting between the two dictators, what we are seeing right now, this is history.
Yeah, because he's a disruptive risk taker. He's willing to break what would be the usual bonds of...
disruptive risk taker or dictator.
Yeah. I'm really disrupting the democracy category.
Yeah, totally. Now, so she subsequently apologized for misspeaking, and of course she was just misspeaking, but many a truth told in jest and misspeaking on Fox,
Freud.
I would say.
It's great when people have to apologize for the most interesting thing they've ever said.
Exactly. The only time we ever noted that she is on Fox and Friends. She usually tries to lay low. It's almost like she's completely embarrassed.
Unless she's interviewing her dad.
Right.
Yeah, that she's like, oh my God.
You are so great. How are people going to know this?
Back in the day, I remember she was trying to do the whole like, millennials, like Social Security, it's going to bankrupt us. It's not going to bankrupt.
Good thing
us. Don't worry
MSNBC
about
gave
it.
her all that
Yeah.
training.
I think I think you'll be all right.
I really don't know how to bring this up. Alex Jones, of course, needs to rush to the YouTube whenever there's any type of situation where someone dies. And of course, what's the angle? What's the angle that you're going to get with Alex Jones? Here it is. This is him responding to the suicide, it appears, of Anthony Bourdain.
Because here's the bottom line. Bourdain was 61 years old. He had a happy 9-year-old daughter. He had just gotten remarried. He'd never been happier. He had been friends with Elon Musk for a long time. So he was becoming best friends with Musk. Musk is fully awake to globalism, the New World Order, the whole brainwashing system, the post-human system they're trying to set up. He's been saying everything that I told you 20 years ago and I put in Endgame 11 years ago, not because he's following what I said, but because that's what the globalists are planning. And he's been let in at the highest levels into their meetings because he's a high IQ guy and a multi-billionaire. And now he's under Soros attack and others trying a hostile takeover. So they were in Marrakesh, Morocco 2 months ago, kicking off the taping of his new season. 0.0 is the production company. He owns his own show. And Musk and him had already been hanging out there in Morocco for 4 or 5 days, really discussing what was happening, what was going on up on this big vista where they had this high-tech science lab connected to some of the leaders of Morocco. And So they're up there doing the shoot.
Pause it. Now, do you think he's
tired.
making all of this
He's super
up?
tired. He's super
We're
tired.
doing a shoot up there, and I got to, God damn it.
He didn't think you had to come into work today.
I have never
I'm
seen
supposed to be
him
on vacation, so I
burned
just
out.
had to throw this one together. So they're up there on the shoot, and they're looking down, and
You can usually tell when it's like, I feel like this is sort of James Bondy. Like, this is James Bond inspired.
So they're up there doing the shoot. You'll remember a few months ago when one of our guests was from Morocco. That was all going on then in Morocco then. And they were discussing all these things, and he was really deprogramming him. And then more of his shows became this whole woke thing globally to what was happening in a pro-human future and pro-space exploration, not a post-industrial world, not a globalist depopulation planet. Not this thing where the AI gods take over that Musk and others have warned about, that Google and others are embracing and saying humans are bad. We need a post-human world. So Bourdain has been anti-Trump, anti-Hillary, anti-Weinstein. He's really written things about Henry Kissinger that are true, that are very bold for somebody who's respected by liberals. And it's because he was seen as somebody, even more than Kanye West, who could double Trump's numbers with black voters. He was seen as somebody that'd be the final domino to fall because he's so respected by liberals out there. And he was showing signs of a conscience. He was realizing what was happening. He was aware of all the government sex trafficking and the things that were going on. And he was beginning to talk about working that into his show. He was working that into his show.
And so that's why he had to be taken out? Is that what is the argument?
He was going to go Trump.
I mean, here's what's going to go out. By the time he's done, Bourdain and Kanye, 40% of black people like Trump. Got to take out the food guy. Stop fucking around, people.
I like how Alex...
What's going to happen to the AI future?
He equivocates liberals and black people in that. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, the big discovery from that clip is that deflated Alex Jones is still awesome.
I'm super tired, but I just want to make sure that I'm in a position to deliver this completely bat crap crazy idea.
And also still making indirect request to Elon Musk for funding. Elon Musk is out trying to basically terrorize media. So this is a very smart play of Alex Jones to be like, I'll give you a fair shake.
And he sees like Bourdain's getting a lot of coverage for good things. So I feel like the cynical part of him knows he needs to like put a turd in that punch.
By the way, that is brilliant to spin like Anthony Bourdain is like the best.
I just looked at what was on Google trending terms, and so I just want to work these into this.
And like an actual like cosmopolitan liberal who did it like from the ground up. And really did. It's easy to make fun of, but his show was great. Really, literally did a show where you just like go across the world and you're like, people have cool food and you shouldn't like deforest where they live or bomb them. Like the most liberal,
non-globalist.
And then, he fits it to like, see, like, because he was there in the Congo eating their local peanut dish, definitely opposed to AI. Exactly.
Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
And the balls of those camera angles he shoots for himself. Wow.
210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, it's John from San Antonio.
Hello, John from San
Sam.
Antonio. Good afternoon to you. How are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, tomorrow there's going to be primaries in Nevada, Virginia, South Carolina, and Maine. And in the 4th District of Nevada, Our Revolution and Justice Democrats endorsed Amy Valea. Will be running in the Democratic Party. She's also a DSA member. I saw Valea last fall in San Antonio when she gave an inspiring speech in favor of Medicare for all at a rally featuring Nina Turner and Jim Hightower. She has a tragic personal story about her daughter, Shaylin. When the 22-year-old Shaylin went to an emergency room in 2015 displaying classic symptoms of deep vein thrombosis, an imminently dangerous condition, but one that is highly treatable if caught in time. According to the family's lawsuit against the facility, when Shaylin told the hospital staff she didn't have insurance, they pressured her into leaving and failed to give her the proper care. Her family believes this ultimately led to her death. If you want more information on this disturbing case, I'd recommend reading Tana Ganiva's Rolling Stone article published on May 16, 2017. This is a great reminder of life and death consequences of voting. The incumbent Democrat, Reuben Kaheen, is not seeking re-election due to a sexual misconduct allegation alleged by a female staffer. Steve Horford, who won the seat in 2012, entered the race and is now the leading fundraiser, but Valea has raised over $150,000, and I hope she pulls off the upset. I want to talk about ranked choice voting in Maine. This is how it works. You choose your number one vote. You choose your ballot, your preferences rather, and your number one choice is counted as your initial vote. If a majority gets over 50%, they win. If they don't, they will go into a ranked choice system where candidates will have with the least amounts of votes are eliminated round by round until a winner is declared. There'll be a vote tomorrow to see if the ranked choice voting will continue in Maine, and I think it'll probably win. If this is adapted by other states, it could promote multiple parties on both the left and the right. In San Francisco, where they had ranked choice voting, candidates with similar policy positions advertise openly about voting number 1 and 2 for their particular candidate. It incentivizes people who want to vote for third parties to vote their conscience, because if they lose in initial rounds, their vote is not wasted because their second or third choice could help a candidate win. Obviously, if you have a big tent party that can keep your coalition together, you have a tremendous electoral advantage. In the presidential election of 1912 is a good example of that, where Teddy Roosevelt and William Taft split the Republican vote that led to the election of Woodrow Wilson. So I have several questions for you. So do you think ranked choice voting will increase? And if it does increase in the short term, will it help the left or the right more? And should Bernie Sanders supporters form their own party because they can overwhelm the Greens? And do you think that an anti-Trump party or libertarians can gain traction on the right?
Wow, John, those are a lot of questions. The only thing I saw the other day, I'm still trying to figure this out. Somebody had shown an example of ranked choice voting that seemed to backfire in some respects. And I can't remember exactly what the details were, and I'm trying to track it down. But I think it was a situation where somebody won 30% or 40% of the first round votes, but someone who got only, 10% of the first round votes ended up winning or something to that effect. I'm not sure. Do I think ranked choice voting will be adopted in other states? I mean, I don't think with any type of great speed, but I think maybe in some states. Do I think it'll benefit? I mean, it depends. On a year like this, I don't know. I really don't know. This is more of like a sort of a math question, frankly. And I'm not.
We know how we feel about that.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I can't even tell you generically who does it potentially support more. If there's more people, from the center left who are on the ballot, does it help them more or less versus the other? I don't really know. I'd have to sort of see how the models play out. But I think that to the extent that I think there's value in a third or fourth party or whatever, I still contend that it should be focused on more local elections. And at least until there's been some type of toehold created in those local elections so that you have the ability to influence, federal elections. I still contend whatever party it is, if you have 3 or 4, members of the Senate who can form a caucus, that's quite powerful. I mean, we hear all the time, like a gang of 8, gang of 6, all of that, because that's the way the Senate works. If you can get 4 senators or 5 senators from one party, some third party, whatnot, you can you can control the Senate, and, or come close to it in some ways. So, I just think in terms of Bernie Sanders supporters starting it, I'm not 100% sure I know what that means. I think there should be a party with a certain ideology, and I would start local, and then go from there. That's my answer to that, John.
But we should attack the Greens at every opportunity because it's funny.
Yeah, I mean that's why I asked the question, because I mean, they would overwhelm the Green Party if the Bernie people did that, but I mean they would still probably have a hard time actually winning elections. And another thing is, a lot of people are saying that they're just simply not going to use ranked choice voting. They're just going to vote the way that they normally have for years and years. And so the person who actually uses ranked choice voting, and if you want for a vote for a minor party, your vote will really be elevated above somebody who just votes for one.
I don't know why people do that. It's another dumb thing where it's just like, this is an expression of me. The way I vote is an expression of who I am. That is there. I mean,
fewer, dumber sentiments.
Honestly.
Well, wait a minute. I mean, can I make a counter argument to that? I mean, if you look at left parties, starting at the beginning of the 20th century, they were committed to their party, and that's how their party grew. And so, I actually agree with you, and I've defended your point, and I still agree with you. But on the other side, I mean, there is a certain argument to I believe in these positions. I mean, that's essentially what our revolution is about also. And this is the way, I'm not saying, I'm going to vote that way forever, but,
John, if there's a rationale, listen, if there's a rationale, someone can make me a logical case that voting one way or another is going to bring about X result, and they even have a theory about how that happens, okay, then fine. But to vote as some reflection of oneself, as a form of self-expression, if you tell me that, like, look, if I go into ranked choice voting, and I haven't done the math here, but if I vote for only 2 candidates as opposed to like 3 slots of what I appreciate, it's going to create more ballast for the second candidate in some fashion because of some algorithm that I can't quite figure out. But if someone comes to me with that argument and that it's going to increase the chances of this candidate, the second candidate, getting elected by, this way because my vote will actually have more power because I'm not diluting it by doing 3, then okay. I may not like your ends, but at least your means, you understand that your vote is a means. But if the vote is an ends in and of itself, it's childish. That's all I can say. Appreciate the call, John.
All right, thank you.
Right. One more quick call. Calling from a 908 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
I don't know. Is it?
Oh, okay, I was just making sure. So this is Chris from New Jersey.
Chris from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
All right, so this is more of a question directed towards Michael and Jamie. It's kind of not really related to the any of the subjects you guys were talking about today. But
can I just say real quick? I mean, I guess go ahead, but those kind of questions better to do on a Thursday.
Better to do on a Thursday?
Yeah, because I'll be in the chair and it doesn't kind of interrupt the flow, if that makes sense.
Well, I won't be here on Thursday usually.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Go ahead then. Then direct it to Jamie.
What's the question?
Go ahead.
What's the question?
All right,
God damn it!
Basically, you guys sort of bring up socialism sometimes, and the kind of what I see is some kind of like a sort of a vague concept of like workers' ownership of means of production, and sometimes I think that kind of turns some people off because it's like kind of vague and not like. When you talk about a different vision for society that's like beyond like markets and private property. I don't know. I think you guys should be kind of more specific. Like, what exactly do you mean by that?
You're turning me off, buddy.
Like for people,
no,
like
I
me,
think
like,
I think I'm pretty. I think I'm pretty. I mean, I'll let actually Jamie go first because we have different.
Jamie's the only
perspectives on that.
ex-appropriator in the office.
That's not totally true.
Oh,
I mean,
go ahead.
Michael walks that line. We had a whole interview.
You don't want private property?
I not to the same degree of what I'm not a full abolisher of private property, no, but I do want to decommodify a significant amount of the economy. No, I've never said that. I'm actually a little confused how you got that read from me. I mean, I'm much more. I guess,
I honestly like. Maybe it's because I haven't watched you talk about it enough, but I kind of got that read just because I thought that's kind of what like socialism is.
I mean, if those words, no, there's different brands. There's different brands of how it's expressed politically. But I think that, I mean, if you're triggered, and I'm not trying to be like rude in using that word, but if you have like a kind of automatic reaction, well, if you're just reacting to that word, I mean, I think that like in my case, if I would say, yeah, I mean, really simply, I think there's a lot of areas of the economy that shouldn't have private activity. Healthcare is an obvious one. I think housing to some very significant degree.
Energy, I would
but I also think more broadly, there's a politics of like reclaiming the commons, and there's also a broader conversation of how democratized you can make business and economies in general. And there's a lot of different models for that are worth looking at, like Madrigon in Spain and some accomplishments in places like Cuba. So all of the above. And to me, I look at it as a much more future-oriented thing. There's examples of some successes, but it's getting out of an old operating system that doesn't work now, and we don't have a full map of it yet.
I mean, if you want
Does that make
specifics,
sense?
Let's hear Jim.
Yeah, it does. It's just like honestly, like it doesn't really turn me off. I'm actually not really like true to like buy that stuff at all. I am interested in that stuff, and like I know what you mean by Mondragon. I just like I know that corporation like the workers self-ownership stuff. It's just like a lot of people I think just like don't know.
I mean, look,
like,
there's
exactly
a bill in Congress right now that I think passed that it passed either the Senate or the House that would call for a government-run bank that would provide financing to workers to buy small, mid-sized firms that
Really?
families are going to sell.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that the owner, the workers can buy it. So I mean, it's just all a matter of degree. But let's let the full-on expropriator,
the commie.
Right,
yeah.
I mean, if you want specifics about how to democratize the economy or bring about worker-owned co-ops, we recently had a great interview that Sam did with Richard Wolff, where they talked about that.
He mentioned that bill
an
too,
hour.
I think, if I remember correctly.
He mentioned the one in the UK, I believe, that Jeremy Corbyn has proposed.
Right.
And like that's a specific. I mean, if I don't often get into the specifics of my my plan to transition from capitalism to socialism, it's because this is not the Jamie Talks About Socialism show. Although I do have a show for that, and it's called The Antifada. But I'm always willing.
I gotta watch that. I haven't yet.
Yeah, check it out. It's pretty good, I think. Tell me what you think.
There's also definitely stuff like this on my show too, for sure. But look, which is the most important part. No, but when you talk about it turning people off, this whole the polling on things like that word socialism have changed significantly. Like I don't think
he's talking about the word necessarily as much as sort of the generalities of it.
The concept of it. I mean,
I just think
it can mean
I
a
think
lot
it's good
of
to
things.
be concrete about what we mean by it.
Yeah,
and
certainly.
I think we are, and I think you could actually hear that even in like the differences between what we're talking about, or even maybe more in terms of the timelines we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very big catch-all term that's been extremely watered down to both good and bad outcomes, I think. Like Bernie Sanders has done a lot for the word democratic socialism. People aren't scared of it anymore, but he is not actually a socialist. he is a social
No,
democrat.
that's true, but he's definitely like opened the Overton window
There's
of
no
what
doubt
kind of
about
things
that.
are allowed to talk about.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, like, I appreciate that from the standpoint of someone who is a democratic socialist, because it might convince more people to get interested in, say, the Democratic Socialists of America, which is an organization that I'm a part of. And then once you join it, we have all kinds of political education and things you can get involved with to learn more and more about it. So in that way, he's sort of a gateway drug, and the numbers did explode after 2016, partly as a result of that, I think.
Appreciate the call.
Yep, thank you.
Bye-bye. Chappie. Just last week, I was exposed to a conservative Twitter exchange with Canadians about tariffs and closed Twitter with the feeling there are thousands of minions ready to go to actual war with Canada. I have a queasy feeling in my stomach ever since. This was made worse by the announcement of our prisons being turned into concentration camps for our other neighbors to the south. Mitch from Houston. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in favor of Ohio and other states purging voter rolls for inactivity. I wonder what Jimmy Dore thinks. Is the conflation of refugees with illegal immigration a new thing? Has it always been like that? I'm pretty sure it's a new thing. And the definition of what constitutes illegal immigration, to cross the border once from a statutory standpoint, is the functional equivalent of buying your drugs from Canada. It is a misdemeanor. It is when you get sent home the first time and come back that I think it raises to the level of a felony. So that is also new. The criminalization as opposed to civil violation of coming across the border or overstaying your visa for an extended period of time. The Ohio decision, we'll talk more about that probably tomorrow. Horrible. Sam's Tinder profile. Hey girl, swipe right. Isn't this new version of La Poupée great? Rural Progressive Okie. I joined Democratic Socialists of America last week. I'm also about 3 weekends behind on Majority Report and TMBS. I'm also sick all weekend. I can't believe you guys are discussing having a war with Canada. Love you guys. Please don't let them take Oklahoma. Not sure about that. Theo Dillon. Hey, just want to thank you for the keep-ons I got for my glasses because you have them. These things? Is that what he's talking about?
I thought it was a Saul Rosenberg joke.
Oh. I have those. Rainy days. Hey, Sammy, please keep on Twitter dunking Dave Rubin. It brings a lot of joy, and hopefully he'll respond one day. It's really almost the only reason why I use Twitter anymore.
He's not going to respond ever.
Ryan from Ohio.
Interested in ideas.
Well, he was responding. You know, the thing about Dave Rubin is he's such a
stupid. Upload it.
A celebrity whore. So he's always trying to get the attention of celebrities. And Michael Ian Black tweeted out, politics is life, politics is theater, politics is, or theater is politics, sports are politics, life is politics, something like that. And Rubin responds with this is what's wrong with progressives. They want to take over government to make everything political. This is a guy who all he talks about. This is a guy, well, first of all, his entire living comes not only from talking about politics, but to be funded by a political organization, the Koch brothers. This is a guy who, when he talks about his bona fides, talks about his marriage. A same-sex marriage, which exists only because of the politics in the past 8 years. This is a guy who has entered into comedy again because of politics. And when he gets up there, half of it is politics. He's on tour. Every city he visits is because of politics. And the only reason why he tweets about Star Wars occasionally, which is fairly lame at this point, is so that he can pretend like he's not doing something political.
Tweets about Star Wars?
Yes.
What does he have to say about Star Wars?
It doesn't matter. Okay. Nothing insightful. Nothing even remotely insightful.
That makes sense.
Look, if you're going to be like a Star Wars nerd, then have something interesting to say about it.
Why so many black people in the galaxy? Just interested in ideas.
I wasn't able to listen live last week, but this is a bit late, but I really hope you guys clip Steve Ducey saying, "Oh no, that sounds terrible," for the soundboard. Artist Cake Maker. The greatest threat to our democracy isn't Russia, it's the fact that state governments can now legally purge voters from the voter rolls. I wish liberals would stop obsessing over Russia and start obsessing over voter suppression. Well, I mean, I think they are to a certain extent. I mean, Eric Holder has this big organization with Barack Obama. I mean, I think there's certainly liberals who have been obsessing about voter suppression. I don't think that's a purview just for non-liberals. Huge Siegel, writing from Ottawa. Neoliberal poster boy, Justin, as in poster torn out of Tiger Beat magazine, has totally weak, failing stat approval numbers lately, and he's riding this Trump trade thing for all it's worth. It's going to help him, Justin Bigley. Even I'm cheering him on somewhat, and I can't stand the creep.
We have a new pipeline that we're going to make, and it's going to be very conscientious of people and the plants beside it.
Jessica Cab, Wisconsin's holding a special election tomorrow, Tuesday the 12th. Scott Walker had to be forced by the Supreme Court of Wisconsin to fill the 2 empty seats. Indeed, Attorney Andrew, Golden State Warriors won the NBA championship on Friday, after which it was revealed to me the Golden State's owner is such an Ayn Rand fan that he named his dogs John Galt and Howard Rourke. Indeed, this is the same man who boasts how smart his management team is and how they are light years ahead of the rest of the NBA, when his team's brilliance is the result of being able to sign their star point guard to a lower contract because of his repeated ankle injuries, and then a spike in the salary cap because the players' union would not agree to cap smoothing. Basically, this titan of industry is nothing more than the beneficiary of tripping over his own dick into success. A libertarian indeed. Ambient racist. Hey guys, left is best. Do you think the rise in Nazis, sexually violent, alt-right candidates in politics the last few years is a result of Trump? Or have they always been around and are just willing to let their awfulness be public now as opposed to a decade ago? I think those two things that you're saying are more or less the same. They've always been around, but Trump has allowed them to let their awfulness be public as opposed to a decade ago. Elmec. What Guy has said is kind of what I've been hearing from my Canadian cousins and aunts since forever, but especially the primaries, that we want to forget. Y'all are Tea Partiers because that guy's Trump definitely American is what I'm being told. Just that our election of Trump, we may see as an anomaly, but the rest of the world very rationally says this is a country that can produce this as a president. There's something wrong with that country.
Right.
Bravo-matic, we've always been at war with Canada. Nick from Manitoba, great interview, so much covered, I don't have room for my Kudlow Foster Brooks joke. Do you think Trudeau wanting to keep the investor-state dispute settlement provision because without it, Trump administration would have to declare Canada a national security threat to pass new tariffs? I understand that the ISDS is used by corporations to crack down on environmental worker regulations, but without an international legal mechanism that just make trade agreements symbolic. Well, you could come up with another mechanism that doesn't hand all the rights to corporations. I mean, you could come up with, you could have that tribunal actually, we're going to seat an environmental official. We're going to seat a labor official. You could fashion these tribunals in a myriad of ways. This one is particularly corporate. And the sovereignty issue is one issue. The other issue is who you're giving your sovereignty to.
Yeah, that's a question I was going to ask too. Like, what would a more progressive trade policy look like? Because right now we have, the neoliberal Obama, Trudeau, Clinton, NAFTA version. And then we have the right populist phony version where Trump's like, I'm going to bring the jobs back, but he's really not. Like, what would a more progressive version of a trade deal look like? There's two different
ways that you can create an even playing field, right? You can go down to the lowest common denominator in terms of environmental, labor, and consumer protections. Or you could go to the highest common denominator and then put benchmarks on how we're going to go up from there. And you could subsidize those who don't have the mechanisms, or those countries that are developing. Obviously between America and Canada, you could think you could easily have parity, right? It's not like, they don't have the resources.
You can also...
that's in the most sort of broadest brush, that's how you do it. We're going to equalize things by making us all have to conform to higher standards in these areas, not lower standards.
And then you'd have to bring in other stakeholders to legitimately write the agreements.
Well,
if
yes.
you had that's how it. That's literally how it happens.
How you execute that is
that's what the International
But you
Labor
have to
Organization
first have that idea that that's the way we're going to do it, as opposed to the other way. It's.
Well, you have to have the mechanics part, because they tried to sell TPP as that, right? Like they got a little bit more sophisticated in the sales job. They said this is what it is, right?
Didn't put out any of the documents.
Well, that's another good indication. What the actual trade policy is will probably be pretty reflected when they actually release. Like when they negotiate a trade deal, and they're like, "We'd like you to read this." That'll probably say something.
Classless creative. Thus, the great maple syrup war began. Otto D. Chat. Everywhere I go, I see stupid people, and now I'm afraid to leave the house. You need to do a segment on the dumbing down of the American people. With that, John Oliver did a great piece on Fox and how they twist the facts. Retcon. Sam's Tinder profile. Hey, girl, swipe left if you believe in white helmet conspiracy theories. Also, two hungry people sharing a small pizza is a zero-sum game. Hubertus, please clip that conversation with Raygun. I need to send it to very misguided friend very badly. Bingo Mosquito. We'll make two videos out of that. We'll do the one with the sound, and then the separate one for Reagan. Let's start a campaign to sell the Statue of Liberty at auction. We're done with her now. Also, it may come down to individual states working out their own trade deals and bucking the feds, and then watch the constitutional fight when the Republicans try to defund individual states. D'Souza Palooza. What's the over-under on the set of pajamas brought to Singapore by Hannity and Gorka? JJ Cool. I saw a clip a lame YouTuber posted where he was still arguing that it was better Trump won over Clinton. They had a clip of you taking a phone call from someone asking if it's better to vote for the guy who puts less people in concentration camps as opposed to the most. These people are insane. Yeah, I think this might have been actually during Obama and Romney, but I can't remember. But the question was like...
Sounds like something you'd get into, though.
No, I think it was that Josh from Pennsylvania. Remember?
That guy was amazing. Jim from PA.
And
he had this real...
And he's like, would you vote for someone who would put less people in a concentration camp or more? And I was like, less.
I'd vote for less concentration camp. And then he would go, and he had this really... I don't know. He did have he had his voice was a bit... He had a kind of an odd voice, and he'd go, "Oh, well, okay. Well, I hope you die of cancer." And it was awesome because his big thing was always like, he actually seemed to have, in his own very, very weird way, like a kind of genuine and incessant concern about like drones, and he was concerned about killing people overseas, which is great. But it was always his loop back. He'd be like, "So you're voting for Obama even though you oppose drones, and you don't see that as hypocritical?" And then, of course, Sam would be like, "I would vote if Himmler ran against Hitler and he had half the concentration camps. I'd have a Himmler button. Do you see?" And then he would go, "Oh, I hope you have an aneurysm." And of course, this is like the only show on the planet where somebody like regularly wishing death on the host is like, "Oh, yep, top of the queue. Definitely got to make sure to answer that guy's calls." I wonder what happened to him.
I think we talked about the hemlock thing.
Oh, we did?
Yes.
Oh, did you play the video?
Oh, was there a video?
Yeah.
I did not see the video.
What's the hemlock thing?
Well, I can't play videos.
Right. Yeah, I think it was TMZ asked Anthony Bourdain what he would serve to Trump and Kim Jong-un, and without hesitation, he goes, hemlock.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that the other day, actually. I do not have the video, though. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 226 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly talk about the dispute resolution mechanism.
Yep.
Because there's a bunch of confusion going around I see it in Canadian discussions too. I'm from Vancouver. The dispute resolution that they're fighting over isn't the investor-state dispute settlement. That's kind of been ignored mostly. It's Chapter 19, which is about anti-dumping and countervailing duties, which involves basically if a country's subsidizing an industry or artificially lowering the price, the other country can impose duties on that. The ISDS has been pretty much ignored.
I didn't realize that. I feel like that was misreported actually somewhere.
Yeah, it is in a lot of, like, I'm a reporter up here. I wrote a story about it in April. And like Canada is the big loser under the ISDS. We have the most claims out of all the claims under it. We have the most against us.
Right. That would make sense.
It was originally intended. Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that's being misreported. And so in terms of that Chapter 19 that you're referring to, where what are the relative positions on how that should be reformed? I mean, what is the sticking point there?
Well, so we use it all. We use Chapter 19 all the time. We've made the most claims under that because for our softwood lumber industry and other industries, and Trump is upset because we subsidize our dairy industry by limiting the amount of supply that can go into the system and thus the amount of imports.
Right.
So that's kind of the sticking point around Chapter 19. But like the reason it's a kind of a no-go for Canada is because we use it all the time for various industries when either U.S. goods are sort of it's called an anti-dumping duty when you guys are sort of flooding the market with lower than market price goods. But another thing is, like, even the fear around the loss of 19 is sort of overemphasized up here because a lot of times we don't even go through Chapter 19. We go through the WTO when there's something wrong, or we'll make a case through both bodies.
So what is your take with that assessment? Like, what is the problem then? I mean, if it's not that important to Canada,
the Chapter 19 is incredibly important to Canada. The ISDS is less important to Canada.
Right.
And we have groups up here that are very against it, like a lot of the left-wing groups.
So the states
NDP.
wanted to mess with Chapter 19. Is that it? Or I'm not 100%.
Yeah, the whole dispute resolution debate over NAFTA right now is all about Chapter 19. There's very little discussion about the ISDS. Like, Trump doesn't want to get rid of the ISDS. He wants to get rid of Chapter 19.
Interesting. It's interesting. I've seen that misreported multiple times. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, like the ISDS has come up a bit, but the real dispute resolution is Chapter 19. There's a third one for general disputes, but that's not really discussed.
Will you send us at majorityreporters@gmail.com a link to what you're talking about if you have it? That'd be great.
Yeah. I can send you my article.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
Our Canadian stringer. There you go. Good thing we, while other outlets were defunding their Canadian stringers, we were investing heavily in our Canadian stringers. So take that. Calling from a 404 area code. Who's this?
Josh from Atlanta.
Josh, what's on your mind?
Guns, of course. I was thinking of two things. One, I remember back to Tucker Carlson talking about how, the barrel in the AR-15 would melt if you shot it, as fast as they were talking about.
Yeah.
We were talking about how, like, he's misconstruing the thing, but I think the dumber part was they were talking about Vegas, and the guy in Vegas had 14 AR-15s with him in the room.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter if the barrel in your gun melts while you're trying to shoot, and kill 58 Ninja 422 just with the gun. You can just pick up your fifth one, and then when that barrel melts, you can pick up your 10th one.
Right.
And it's just like, that's how broken it is. And then my other point on guns was just in general, I was looking at a tweet from the father at Parkland who's more focused on, like, quote-unquote school safety, and just the way people talk about it. Like, he's at this governor's conference where he's saying, we need to be able to stop a shooting in 1 minute. And I'm like, well, someone's already dead in that 1 minute. I mean, there's 5 people. That's 5 or 6 deaths and 42 injuries in Las Vegas in a minute.
Right.
And it's stupid that we, just the general public, have to make concessions of,
right.
Well, we'll only kill 5 or 6.
Who's going to do this? Who's going to stop somebody in a minute? I mean, like, how many people do you need? How many armed guards do you need in a school to stop a shooter within a minute? Honestly, like this is stuff this is superhero fantasy stuff. Like, literally superhero.
Now you're talking my language.
I mean, honestly,
Well, yeah, it is.
Right, exactly. Here we go.
all gun culture in America is a superhero fantasy. That's the thing, but it sucks. Like, why do we have to constantly make concessions of, we got to buy body armor to put in our kids' bags, they have to wear clear backpacks, we can't just go wherever we want and not risk being shot? Why do I have, every once in a while I'll think, oh, that window next to me, maybe a bullet will just fly through that window and hit me.
Right.
Just because someone shot through a wall and
Is it even legal not to? You're in Georgia, right? Is it legal even to not bring your guns into a bar now? Are you allowed to not bring your gun into a bar?
Hopefully Stacey Abrams can deal with that.
Appreciate the call. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right,
we have
drive
some people
careful.
here making
Drive
the
careful.
state unsafe.
All right. Calling from 478 area code. Who's this? I believe that you are the final caller of the day. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Well, howdy there, Sam. This is Jeff, Georgia. When I get to 20 patrons, I'm going to drink this bottle of moonshine and vandalize this police group.
You know what's going to happen now? You're going to get visited by the police officers. They're going to come to your door because you said an offensive joke.
Yes, which was a joke. I'm just going to tell for any law enforcement community members listening that that was a joke.
But it was an offensive joke, so we're going to come to your door.
Yeah, it was totally a joke. We believe you.
There was violence in that joke? I just want to stipulate there was violence in that joke. No, who's the guy,
Michael,
the Vermont
don't
caller?
Come at you, man. I will come at you so hard, man, because I don't want to talk about that, man. Okay. I want to talk about the Canadian menace.
Yeah.
I was pleased to hear Guy let your audience know that all guests on the majority report are eligible to be a foreign minister to a country, and so I come with a proposal: as minister to Canada, I will appoint a Lord Commander up to the job of manning the wall against the Canadian threat. And for far too long, these white devils, with their tar sands oil and culture that is consistently 10 years behind the United States, taking advantage of us. And Sam, if you're not sold on all that, I got one more sweetener for you. We're going to put a massive tariff on all Jordan Peterson novels, books, materials of any kind, right? You're not going to be able to get that stuff unless you pay. Out the nose, man. That's for damn sure. So everyone, contact your local, communist, come on, unique and tell them that vote for Jeff Georgia here for Minister of Canada.
There you go, Jeff Georgia, new minister to Canada, not from Canada.
No, to Canada.
Exactly, very different, extremely different. Hey man, I do want to say something serious about this. I'm no Trudeau fan, but just as the prior scenario I painted for you is fantasy, so is the idea that Canada is a national security threat to us. That means we need to screw them on these tariffs. I'm no Trudeau fan. This guy's very overrated in our press. But I can't blame him nor anyone else in any foreign country who's being nervous, because I frankly agree with him. Yeah. Americans didn't get suddenly crazier in 2016. What's happening is our political system is showing itself to be increasingly rickety and volatile. And many times in our history, we have stopped and we have made amendments to our system to stabilize it, make it more egalitarian, more democratic, as best we could with mixed results. But certainly we have tried, and we need to do so in the future. What I want people to understand about the reason they're nervous is not because Americans have suddenly morphed into fascists. It's because our system has become accommodating to fascism.
Yep. Well said. Appreciate the call. Jeff from Georgia.
I appreciate you, Majority Report. Everyone have a good week. Yo!
Dissident peasant.
Hell yeah.
All right, that was the final call of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a couple more IMs here. Session sucks. Shout out to Marco Rubio today. Despite everything going on, he's keeping his eye on the ball. I don't know what that means. Censor sweep. Canadian accent. Yeah, I just heard Justin Trudeau talking on CBC. Yeah, he called Trump a hoser.
A hoser?
Yeah, there you go.
It's prime.
Tomcat. Hi, zero-sum gamers. Today is the 1-year anniversary of that white boy calling it to try and argue the bell curve and racial IQ differences and ending up bragging about his adventures with Sam's then wife. I was watching it earlier with Dad, and he's gotten soft and touchy in his old age. He thought you were acting inappropriately by being your jokey self about it. He also didn't like Cody Johnston's video about Elon Musk the other day for being unfair towards Musk. I love him, but what should I do with him? Cheers, White Devils. P.S. More God-sod clips now that he's wind his way into the intellectual dark web.
Oh, this is the funniest thing. Do I have time for a 30-second diversion here?
Yes, I heard this.
So God-sod was like this guy who looked like some nice Jewish auntie. And I guess he used to go on Rogan years ago, and he was kind of like, he would be like,
He was the forerunner.
Yeah, he was the guy. He was legitimately like that. I am a professor, and I cannot say things about, women like to look at porn or whatever his thing was. And Muslims are bad, and I can't say this in Canada. It's very bad. And somehow, and I actually thought this myself, because in the last 16 months, when this stuff has really popped as an actual mainstream phenomenon, I'm like, where did that guy go? It's like he invented an art form and he doesn't get any credit. And apparently he literally was bitching at Barry Weiss on social media. Where is my credit? My friend. I make a pioneering career of whining about college students as a professor. Why I get no credit?
Been there.
He brought me back.
Who's the Caboose?
Totally forgot about that guy.
Who's the Caboose was the first fictional narrative movie shot on digital video, and
just like Who's the Caboose. And no one, Rachel Maddow never thanks you for anything.
Never.
You are
never,
the first.
Never. You hear people talking about all sorts of other shit.
Other movies that were made.
Yes, I guess I can't necessarily point
no, it thanks me.
Oh, Dogma this, Dogma that. Whoa,
wait, I thought it was
great.
I thought it wasn't the movie.
Dogma. We did it, Dogma 95. We did it, we did it with specific rules. Give me a break. A penny for your thoughts. Wondering if any MR team attended the Naomi Klein event on Puerto Rico at Cooper Union last Wednesday. No, but want to get her on for a book, actually. Donald Trump. I'm no fan of Trudeau, but if Trump thinks he can intimidate him with that 8-year-old king of the monkey bars bullshit talk, he should pull his head out of his orange rear end and think again. Trudeau laid a beating on a Canadian senator in a charity boxing match. Mark in Jersey. Hey, MR crew, I'm pretty sure that all the back and forth between Trump and Trudeau is solely because Ivanka Trump has been quoted as saying Trudeau is a hottie. That's what I was asking about with Guy, if he'd heard the name come up. Sean, I'm not using an American steel and aluminum as a national security risk. Trump is the biggest risk to our national security as anyone. He never used American steel or aluminum in his buildings. Well, the idea is that you don't want the manufacturing to all go there because in the event of a time of war, we might need that steel or something. It's, I guess, theoretically the idea. Scrump's Pile. I'm pretty sure the whole bit about Bourdain and Musk in Morocco was lifted from Abel Ferraro's movie of the William Gibson short story New Rose Hotel starring Asia Argento. More clues into Alex Jones' stream of consciousness. Weird. Guillotine Operator. Last year, Socialist Alternative candidate for Minneapolis City Council Ginger Jetson won the first round, but a mainstream Dem won out overall through ranked choice. Vacant. In your conversation with Alex Jones today, self-proclaimed smart guy, new Matt, used the word equivocate to mean conflate. No, I don't think he meant equivocate to mean conflate. I think he meant equivalent
Water boat.
I caught that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I was going to say something about that. If this show tolerates awkward malapropisms, we may as well bring back old Matt. At least he's diverse.
This show's pretty tolerant of awkward.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hardly think that those have been missing from any of us.
Robin Reno. I know this is out of date. I just imagine a seance with the Bush family where Barbara Bush's head is revealing family secrets, and everyone can see and hear her. But
Jeb still wanted to massage me. He said, force it, but he want to.
4 more.
Jeff.
IM's Kentucky Fried Comrade. David Farris recently wrote an op-ed in HuffPost arguing that ranked choice voting would help smooth over the problems in California's top 2 primary system. Keep cucking, too. Connecticut used a form of ranked choice voting recently in their convention for the 5th Congressional District when a Black Teacher of the Year won. They held open voting while party leaders twisted arms on the floor, switched the outcome to a white candidate, and quickly closed voting. Well, that's not a problem with ranked choice voting as much as it is with the other aspects of that. Sam from KS. I definitely understand and agree with your position on passion voting. What is your perspective on how it could possibly influence left of center politicians as an attainable but yet untapped voting bloc? I'm not sure I even follow that question. Sorry. And the final IM of the day. Disco Stew, the entire Steele dossier is true. Children are being housed in cages, and the goddamn Democrats are talking about pay-go. Between Trump and the GOP, we've reached the point of irreparable damage to democracy. Congress is ineffective, the executive is corrupted, and now so is the judiciary. Dark times ahead. We are so screwed. Nice way to finish the show. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive,